What's up, y'all? Hey, it is DJ, owner of the Slivka Property Group, anchored by Keller Williams right here in Johnson City, Tennessee. And this video is for you if you are thinking of moving to Johnson City in 2026. Stop what you're doing, watch this thing. You need to know exactly what's going on here, and I'm here to help you. So what you're going to be surprised by is I'm actually going to lead with the first most important thing I think I would want to know before moving to this area. Now, some of these other parts, though, may be something that you find very interesting. So what I need you to do is tell me in the comments. If I need to adjust something in the future, I can definitely do it because your feedback is very important. So here's the right off the bat thing. First, we're going to talk about jobs in the area. Second thing we're going to talk about are both sales tax, state income tax, property tax. That's very huge and key, and Tennessee is different than some areas like Virginia and North Carolina and Kentucky that border the state. Also, we're going to talk about entertainment in the area, both what's available here and what's available in a short drive around the area. We're also going to talk about the environmental trade-off. So what I mean there is that we are going to talk about the 4 different seasons, kind of the pros and cons of some of the different seasons that we have there, like pollen in the summer, snow in the winter, things like that that I think you would find very helpful. And also, we're going to talk about the food and shopping scene here locally and why there are some good things and there's some bad things about it. So again, if you were thinking about moving to this area, you need to know these things, and you also need someone to help you, someone like me. All right, so like I said, right off the rip, there's some things that you need to know about jobs in this area. Now, there's a lot of different types of things you could do here. What I've seen the people moving here ask the most is the local jobs, what are they paying? But conversely, some people that are moving here have work from home jobs. So really, they're kind of focused on the cost of living. Good news for you, we're going to get into both of those scenarios here. So one of the cons of living in this area is there actually is lower paying local jobs than national averages. So what I mean is that for a case in point, a factory manager, you're going to be 40% below the national average here. Human resources manager, you're going to be 27% below the national average here. Just a general manager, I pulled these numbers from Indeed, you're going to be 9% above the national average. And getting into healthcare, so some of the bigger jobs and bigger opportunities for people to find work here is in the healthcare sector. So both Ballad Health and the Veterans Hospital here locally in Johnson City, and Ballad has hospitals all around the Tennessee and Southwest Virginia area. They have a ton of job openings. So I'm going to run you through real quickly. Again, this is based on numbers from Indeed, but where they stack up against the national average. So healthcare wise, nursing, they did this by hour, 27% above the national average. So if you're a nurse, it may be time to look at moving to this area compared to the national average all across the United States. Another one I pulled was physician's assistant. Those are actually 7% below the national average. Third one I pulled, nurse practitioners, 13% below the national average. And physicians, if you're a doctor listening to this, I know there's a ton of different type of doctors, but 37% above the national average. In general, physicians are getting paid here versus the national average. So one thing to think about when you hear about the jobs that were lower is how does that compare to the cost of living? We're going to get into that later, so stick around. Make sure that you pay attention for that. The main local employers that we have around here are Ballad Healthcare. They have all the hospitals. They run all the hospitals here locally, and they are going to be the #1 healthcare provider. The second healthcare provider is obviously the VA that's ran by the government, the Veterans Administration. The school system has a ton of local jobs. And what I mean is that there's both city, county, and the East Tennessee State University, Milligan University, King College, or King University in around Bristol. And then in Greenville, there's also Tusculum University. So put all those things together. Education is one of the largest employers around the area, much like any other city, of course. And then, of course, Eastman and Kingsport, we're going to have a separate video all about Kingsport and Eastman and all about that ecosystem in there. But those are the main people that are hiring jobs around here. So if you are interested, look at those places for jobs and opportunities for yourself. So we talked about jobs, we talked about pay and where they stack up against the national average. Let's also talk about the median household income around here. So in Washington County, Tennessee, it's about $60,000. How does that stack up against the national average of the other median incomes? And roughly, we are about modest to middle income in that bracket for the Washington and Sullivan County and the data I pulled. So again, we talked about some jobs that are higher than the national average, lower than the national average, but those are really good data points. One other data point we need to look at is how those jobs stack up against the cost of living. So if you have an opportunity to work from home, there's a lot of people I've sold houses to. As I've already mentioned, I'm a local realtor here. I own the Slivka property group with Keller Williams in Johnson City. There are tons of opportunity for work for home jobs because if you live in a state out west like California, Oregon, Washington, and you have a job based on wages there, you can easily move, of course, if your supervisor in your company is okay with it, to Tennessee and live in Johnson City and have a much lower cost of living than where your job is based out of. And there are a ton of people who have done that. Both they did that during COVID and they still do that today. I get a number of phone calls where they ask those questions. The core of that is, you guessed it, internet and availability. So let's dive into what internet availability there is in the small metro areas we have and then farther out, because there's a lot of times people ask me about having land and they also want really good access to high-speed internet. And that can happen, but I don't want you to think it's as prevalent as you may think in your current area. All right, so let's make sure we cover one of the most important things for working from home, which is high-speed internet and availability. In and around Washington County and the Johnson City area, BrightRidge, who's the local utility provider for electricity, has massive high-speed internet compared to major cities and their averages. Also, there's Spectrum, who has high-speed internet, Brightspeed internet, and the local cell phone companies or places like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile that have opportunities for you to get some sort of box in your home if you're familiar with that. So going out to the farther parts of the counties, the rural areas, you may even, if those providers are not available, you may look to something like Starlink. You may look to, again, those cell phone providers to provide you with some sort of box. There is very much ample opportunity. I want to make sure we break down the barrier that I have to have high-speed internet, but I can only have it in a city. Most of the areas around here, over 90%, I would say, have access to good high-speed internet. So what I want you to hear is, if you're working from home, check that box off your list. So we talked about jobs, local availability for jobs and what the wages look like. We talked about work from home jobs, what that looks like with high-speed internet. We a little bit talked about cost of living, but let's just tie all that together. Cost of living in Northeast Tennessee is about 15 to 20% lower than the national average. And we'll just throw numbers out here. We got this from, again, Indeed. Tennessee on the job index ranks around a little around 90. Again, Northeast Tennessee is about around 75 to 80 on this index. Illinois is about 100, a little over it. Florida about 100 or a little over it. Now we get into California, it's closer to 140 on the index. And so if you live in some of those states, I bring those up because that's where a lot of people are moving from. And you could do a simple Google search and find what your cost of living is in your area. Here's really what it comes down to. If you make this wage, and this is how much house you can have in your area, and you're looking to move here, and you reach out to me and you say, hey, this is what I want. What does that look like? Whether you're looking at homes on the internet, whether it's a search I send you, whatever, you figure out what your monthly payment's going to be. And then you figure out the spread of what your cost of living adjustment will be. If it's greater, it would probably make a lot of sense to move to this area. Now, if it's lower, if it doesn't work, then obviously, now you know. But that's what this video is for, is to help you figure out the pros and cons of moving to this area in 2026. Next up on the list of things we're going to talk about, taxes. So 3 different things we're going to talk about: property taxes, sales tax, and state income tax. These are 3 different ways that money's going to come out of your check or come out of your bank account and pay taxes to local municipalities, the state, and at the federal level. So property taxes overall, I'm just going to give you some numbers about the average property tax in each county. Again, these are from various different sources that we'll link in the notes and in our blog posts on our website. But in Sullivan County, the average is $872 a year for property taxes. Carter County, $816 a year. Washington County in Tennessee is a little bit higher because you pay both city and Johnson City if you're living in that area. Jonesboro has city tax, and then also you have Washington County tax, but that is still under $1,300 a year. So if you're like my mom who lives in Ohio, her property taxes are somewhere between $3,000 to $4,000. We have a rental in a separate part of America. Those property taxes are over $3,000 a year. So the point I'm trying to make is, here's the average of property tax in America. Here's where Tennessee and Northeast Tennessee is at. It's much lower. Tennessee is also one of only 9 states that offers no state income tax whatsoever. So that's really important. And everything I'm going to say here, I'm going to put a disclaimer out here. I'm no CPA. I'm no tax attorney. Verify everything, of course, with professionals. I'm a realtor that can help you relocate. But when it comes to tax law, I offer no guidance whatsoever. But if you are someone who makes a lot of money and you want to go somewhere where state income tax is not part of the equation, Tennessee is probably one of those areas you're looking at. Now, there are a ton of different places to live. Tennessee offers a ton of opportunity. But if you're looking for a very good low cost of living, Northeast Tennessee may be for you. All right, the final part on the tax segment that we're going to talk about is sales tax. Now, I told you about the good with property tax. I told you about the good with state income tax. Now I'm going to tell you the bad. Our sales tax in this area is one of top 2 in the nation. So we are over 9% on sales tax. So that means things like groceries, clothing, dining out, in general, shopping. We carry a higher tax burden here than much of the rest of America. Now, of course, we get by with that, or there's a lot of local people that are okay with that because, again, property taxes are low. There's no state income tax. So again, it's a pro and con list about what makes sense for you and your family and your financial situation. So finally, the main point I want to say with this: low property taxes, no state income tax, higher than average sales tax, all that situation goes in to help you figure out, is this the best place for you to live? Really depends on your spending habits, who you're spending for. For me, my wife and I have 4 kids. Sales tax is pretty big. We buy a lot of stuff. Our kids do a lot of things. They eat a lot of food, and we need to know every month about how much we're going to spend with that. So, of course, we've lived here a very long time, so there's no reason for us to move. But if someone like you that's looking to move, this may be something that you need to bring into account. All right, third on our list of the things that you need to know before moving to Johnson City in 2026 is the entertainment scene. So what that means is things you do for entertainment, whether that's sporting events, whether that's going to concerts, whether that's listening to comedians, just something to pass the time. You need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly about this area. So I will tell you, Johnson City and the surrounding areas are what people call small metro, right around 500,000 people or less. So between Johnson City, Bristol, and Kingsport, those 3 cities alone, the Tri-Cities, make up about 500,000 people. So there's a good and a bad to that. So the good part is very small town feel. A lot of people know everyone, and that's good if that's what you're looking for. The backside of that is that there is not a lot of big things that happen here. So case in point, if you live in a city like Nashville, there's huge concerts happening every month. Major artists are coming in town. If you live in a city like New York or LA or San Francisco or parts of Florida, there's big things happening every day. The downside is that doesn't happen here locally. The good side of that, though, is that you are just a couple short hours away on a drive to places like Knoxville, Charlotte, Asheville, where concerts like that are taking place. So most recently in Knoxville, Of course, Morgan Wallen is a huge country artist. He is actually originally from Sneedville, which is closer to Johnson City than you would think, but he claims Knoxville. That's where he spent most of his life. But he came to Knoxville last summer in 2025. It was huge. Everyone I knew from this area drove up to see that concert. Short drive, 2 hours, if that's something you like. Now, if that's something you want where it's something local, there's not that much opportunity that happens often. But if you wanted to go to Charlotte, a huge entertainment draw are the Savannah Bananas, and they were there recently. They sold out their stadium like they do every time. That's about a 3.5-hour drive right there. And in Asheville, there's bigger comedians that come there as well. So if you're looking for things to do, what I want you to hear is that Johnson City does have a ton of things to do. The amount of it, though, is a lot less than if you were in a bigger city like Nashville or Atlanta, Charlotte, cities like that. So now let's talk about some of the local events that happens here. So venues that we have, of course, Bristol Motor Speedway, that's huge. There's 2 races a year, the Food City 500 and the Bass Pro Shops Night Race. We recently just had a baseball game at the stadium, which was really cool. They took the turf from that field and gave it to the ETSU men's baseball team. So it's really cool to go there and see there's actually a Major League Baseball game played on that turf that's at that field right now. They also hosted a concert series called Country Thunder. Morgan Wallen was also on that as well. I personally saw Cody Johnson there. It was one of the best concerts of my life. My wife and I went, and we expect that to come back. But that's a venue that there are things that happen, but there's maybe 1 concert series that comes a year, maybe 2. And so, of course, that's a big race thing, but there's not as much that happens around there. So that's a pro or a con, depending on how you look at it. Also, the Appalachian Fairground, there's a ton of things that happen there. Recently, we had Zach Top. He's a bigger country artist. Shenandoah was there, Lee Greenwood, Crowder. Last year, Jackson Dean came. And downtown Kingsport, there's a annual thing called the Fun Fest, the Kingsport Fun Fest. And we had an artist as big as Brad Paisley that came this year in 2025. So there are things that happen. There's things that people go to. It's just not as prevalent, like I said, as bigger cities like Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, places like that. So there's also small town events that happen as well. One of the bigger ones in Johnson City is the Blue Plum Fest, the Meet the Mountains Festival, Fridays after 5 in downtown Johnson City, which is one of my favorite things to do. Like I said before, the races at Bristol Motor Speedway, the Food City 500, the Bass Pro Night Race, those are local things to do. Do they happen? Is there entertainment? Yes, absolutely. Is it as prevalent as bigger cities? No. So if you don't mind to get away for a weekend and go somewhere, this is great for you. But if you want something to be there in your hometown, to go in and go out and be done in 3 to 4 hours, then this place may not be for you, but you need to know that before you move here, spend a bunch of money, and someone just needs to be honest with you. All right, number 4 on our list of pros and cons of moving to Johnson City in 2026, the environmental trade-off. So what I mean by that are the seasons, what they have to offer, the snow in the winter, the pollen in the spring, the heat and humidity in the summer. These are things you need to know about. So one of the great things about this area in Northeast Tennessee, right by the mountains, is that we do actually have 4 true seasons. I've heard a lot of people from Florida tell me when I follow back up with them about moving here, oh my gosh, like this is the best place ever. We actually have a real fall, we have a real winter, we have a real spring, and summer, it's really not that bad compared to where I've been. And then there's other people who have been from out west who go, oh my gosh, these summers are just absolutely brutal. It's all in perspective about where you've lived before, what you can tolerate. Everything here is mild compared to national averages though. So case in point, the springs, mild. The summer's heat and humidity, yeah, it's there. The average temperature in July is right around 84 to 86, but it's still manageable. The heat, one thing of note, it is oppressive, so that means there is heat, there is humidity, but it doesn't last that long. And Johnson City's somewhere in the middle nationally. It's more humid than arid regions like the desert, but it's also less consistently swamp-like places that are near the coast. If you think of South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, and then of course parts of Florida. So another thing to talk about with weather is the snow. In general, people want to know how much snow do you guys get there a year? And the answer is about 10 to 11 inches over the past 5 years is from the research that we could put together. So what that means is there's obviously some winters where there's way less. There's obviously winters where there's way more. So on average, that's what you can count on, is about 5 good snows that we get. And does that throw this area into a complete panic compared to where I grew up in Northeast Ohio? Yes, it is very different. So that's something to think about as well. But as quickly as it comes and the snow comes down, it's beautiful. It does obviously vacate in about a week. So one thing of note as well is that in higher elevations, places like Mountain City in Johnson County, Roan Mountain in Carter County, and then parts of Kingsport in Sullivan County, they actually do get more snow than average. So obviously because they're at a higher elevation, they are going to get more snow. So that's something to think about as you're looking in the area. But what more snow means is not places like Buffalo, New York that are getting feet of snow every time there's weather. What that means is that it's more couple inches different. So for instance, if Johnson City gets a ½ inch or an inch, those places may get an inch and a quarter or something like that. It's not completely unmanageable whatsoever. Obviously, we've talked about summer, we've talked about winter, talking about fall. I've done a whole video on that, which we'll link in the notes. But fall in Johnson City and the surrounding areas, it's absolutely amazing. We have 3 weeks of some of the most gorgeous colors on the leaves, the crisp mornings, the absolute cool afternoons. It is something we receive very well after those hot summers. And finally, my favorite season, spring. It used to be fall, but spring, now that I have kids and my kids are cooped up all winter. And so now we could get them outside. Main reasons for that are the flowers are blooming. The trees are coming back to life with color. The grass is coming back. I love cutting my grass. The warm weather gets you back outside with your kids playing. Baseball starts back up. Softball, spring sports start back up. If you're a golfer like me, then you could finally get out there and not have to wear 5 different layers to know what the weather's going to be like. The pro and con, though, here, this is very important. Spring around here, the pollen levels are higher than average. So that's something you need to know. If you just absolutely get destroyed by allergies, this is something that you need to know about and you need to plan in advance of. Obviously, visiting during spring is going to be the most important thing to do if you're very much affected by that. But if something you get mildly affected, it's not something that you wouldn't feel in any other part of America that you live in already if those pollen levels are the same. And one more thing I want to touch on about summer. A lot of times people ask us about strong thunderstorms and even tornadoes. The last tornado of record in the area that I could find was 2011. So take that into account when thinking about weather in this area. Yes, we do get thunderstorms. Yes, we do get strong wind. But because of the mountain ranges, it really cuts down on things like that versus places like Middle Tennessee where there's not as many mountains and it's a little more flat and open, who they see a lot more tornadoes and severe weather throughout the course of a year. All right, we're here at our last part of the pros and cons of moving to our area in 2026. I'm glad you stuck around. This one actually may be the most important. So just to catch you up, we've talked about jobs, we've talked about taxes, we've talked about entertainment, we've talked about weather. Now let's talk about the food and shopping scene around us. So we have a lot of large chains around here, much like any other city. So what I want you to hear is, cool, you pretty much have everything you need. And also too, kind of in little spurts of the different Tri-Cities area, and also Greenville as well. Greenville has pretty much everything you need. Grocery stores like Walmart, Ingles, which is a regional grocery store out of Asheville, Food City, which is my personal favorite grocery store here. They're based out of Abingdon, Virginia, but they have a ton of places all over here in Northeast Tennessee. Also Food Lion, that's a large chain that you may have heard of. But those places are here, and there's multiple of them. So access is not something that you worry about. Oh, and of course, can't forget Dollar General and Dollar Tree. Those things are everywhere, just like the rest of America. But the South, of course, also too has those in prevalent supply. But when it comes down to shopping, there are big box stores here. That's what you need to know. But in my honest opinion, we do lack a lot of smaller stores that give you that feel of working with someone who lives here locally. But that doesn't mean we don't have them. There are a ton of great, amazing boutiques for both men and women, a ton of local companies that you could support. The cool thing about this is, though, when you go to these local companies, you're going to meet the people. Something really cool I'm going to link in the show notes as well. I have a separate YouTube channel where I interview local business owners and people in the community. So that's something even better. You can get to hear what these people are talking about their businesses in the local area and how the impact is on what they're doing in Johnson City and the surrounding area. But we do have big box stores like Target, obviously Lowe's and Home Depot of multiple places around here, Academy Sports, Best Buy, Old Navy, all the other places like that there are around here. Now there are a couple different mall places that you may want to check out. So the mall at Johnson City has places like JCPenney, Belk, Dick's Sporting Goods, Home Goods, just to name a few. Of course, there's others as well. The Kingsport Mall in Kingsport, Tennessee also has a Belk. They have Dunham's, they have American Eagle, of course, other places as well that you could research and see. Point I'm trying to make is there are multiple different stores that you may see that you need something from that you could go to in person. You don't have to go to Asheville for a lot of those things. You don't have to go to Knoxville for a lot of those things. And also the Pinnacle in Bristol has a ton of stores there as well. Some of them, just to name a few, are Bass Pro, again, another Belk, and another Dick's Sporting Goods. So it seems like Belk is everywhere, obviously, around here. But again, there's also a ton of locally owned stores and boutiques, both for men and women, that are providing you that shopping local experience where you can actually meet the business owner. And again, I want to plug my Northeast Tennessee YouTube channel where I talk about what it's like having a business in this area so you guys can meet and see the people who have local businesses here and have their impact on it. So restaurants, again, we have big chains. We have pretty much every big chain around here. So that's a pro and a con. Again, the pro is you have every restaurant you could ever think of when you come here, but you also don't have a lot of local restaurants. Now that is up and coming. I've been here 6 years. I relocated here from Nashville. There are a ton of places that have came together since I've come here, but it's also very few compared to what I'm used to and what you may be used to in the city that you're moving from. But the big chains, just to name a few, Texas Roadhouse, Aubrey's, Logan's, Applebee's, all those restaurants like that. But also some local companies that I want to highlight. Gourmet & Company, which is my favorite upscale lunch restaurant to go to maybe take a client to, take my wife out for a nice lunch date, to take my daughter out to, just to make her feel special. Also, there's a local owned company called the Stir Fry Group, and they have multiple different restaurants here. Some of those, to name a few, are The Label, Southern Craft Barbecue, 620 State in Bristol, Wan Chow in Johnson City, and Stir Fry Cafe in Kingsport. There's also a ton of local coffee shops around here. Again, let's go back and plug my YouTube channel. You could see interviews with the owners there, but there is no shortage of great, amazing places where they're making great coffee and providing a really good atmosphere for you to have your meeting, to knock out some work, to do whatever you need to do in your coffee setting. All right, y'all stuck around. Thank you so much. There was a lot of information here. We talked about the pros and cons of moving to Johnson City. This is specific to 2026. Don't move here until you watch this video. That's what you need to know. So jobs, taxes, entertainment, weather, and the food and shopping scene, we all talked about that. So you need to know pros and cons for both. I can help you figure out what best fits you as far as homes, but you need to have this information to figure out this is the best area for you. If it's not, great, you watch this video and figure that out. If it is, awesome, give me a call. I'm never too busy to respond to something. Text, phone call, email, smoke signals, Pony Express, whatever you feel like you need to do, please reach out. Thank you guys for watching. My name's DJ. I own the Slivka Property Group right here in Johnson City, Tennessee, and I'm brokered by Keller Williams. Like, subscribe, share, comment, tell everybody about this channel. Hope you all have a good day.